Alright, so for today's video, we're going to be talking about cards that you have to pick up right now if you don't want to spend too much money in a couple weeks' time. The meta is shifting, there's Valiant Smashers, Phantom Nightmare, a whole bunch of new stuff, decks, support. It's happening and cards are going up in price, so you want to pick up those right now. If there are any other ideas you may have and cards that you came up with that are must-haves right now, feel free to share them in the comments down below, as well as like the video if you enjoy it. Now, for the first card, we have Gyoti Gearfried, the Magical Steel Knight. I'm gonna be looking down so I can share some of the prices with you and some of the differences in prices. Because if you look at this card, before it became a really popular Super Poly target, it was around €1, maybe €2. It's from King's Court, which is kind of not a recent set actually. So yeah, it is going up in price because it only has the one printing, unless you wanna pick up the expensive version from King's Court, which I don't know why you would do that. Okay, so basically this card is a really nice Super Poly target because if you look at the materials, it's 2 warrior monsters with different attributes. And right now, some of the most notable warrior monsters in the meta are SP as well as Baron. Not to mention that Infernoble just has warrior monsters, period. So it's also really nice against that as well. You may want to pick it up because it also has a really good effect. Now, for some of these cards, I want to actually read them to you because some of you may not be familiar with them. So this one, basically, once returned, when a card or effect is activated that targets this card, you can negate the effect. You can destroy one card on the field, which is non-targeting. And if it was fusion summoned using monsters on the field as material, which is going to be most of the time at least, it can also attack twice. So later also, when it battles an opponent's monster, during damage calculation, you can banish one spell and you can basically gain the attack equal to half the current defense. And all of these effects are actually going to be live because you would be using Super Polymerization to make it with monsters on the field, and then you also get to banish the Super Poly, make it gain, and also it's gonna have 2 attacks. So the card is actually really good. And like I said, Super Polymerization is popular because you actually have multiple decks ending on very similar boards of warrior monsters, mainly because SP is just such a notable monster right now. So this card is going up in price. It's about €8. I'm lying, it's literally like €13 for an English copy. So you may want to pick it up before it's too late. And moving on to another card that's actually probably going to go up in price a tiny bit further down the line, because if you check out some of the price charts, like it is steadily going up, but it's not gonna be like an insane spike out of the blue. It could be though, and what I'm talking about is Sky Crisis. Now, this card just proved itself to be really useful in people's extra decks, but you don't make it every single game. So it's kind of weird, like you're gonna find yourself in a situation where it's just gonna win you the game outright because it's that additional monster on the board for your opponent to deal with, and it's gonna make it so your opponent actually has a hard time getting rid of it. And it's also fairly easy to make, so as soon as people realize that this card is almost a must-have and it becomes more and more popular, the price chart is not gonna be, you know, like that anymore. It's just going to spike. So you can see it going up, and upon release, it was like, you know, almost 30, but those prices are never that realistic. So then we were looking at 15 to 16 euros per copy, and right now it's almost 20. So I would get one just so you can switch it out of your extra decks depending on how many decks you own, because it's going to be useful in almost every single one of them. So yeah, this card is just, you are going to find yourself in situations when it's going to be useful, I guarantee you. So this card is something you have to look out for. And the next one is actually going to be Crimson Dragon. Now, if you look at this price chart, it's really funny because it's like going up and down depending on how popular it was. Like it saw some play in some of the synchro strategies, which just proved themselves to not be as amazing. And now in Monodium, it's like actually really, really useful. But we are also looking at some of the other archetypes, mainly that's going to be Centurion, which is from Valiant Smashers. And sort of the entire idea of the deck, among other things, is to make the King Calamity lock. And what better way to make the lock than with Crimson Dragon? It was around 14 to 15 euros this entire time, and then it went down to like 12 to 13, but it is going up. You're gonna see it at a price trend of about 14 to 15 again. So I assume that the second Centurion comes out, if it actually proves itself to be meta relevant, Crimson Dragon is going to spike. It always happens with secret rares from main sets. So usually when you see something that's generic and good, I would suggest to get it as soon as possible, maybe even upon release if it's a little cheaper, because on release it just wasn't that insane. Like, we all knew the card has potential, it just didn't immediately go into this, OP meta deck. So when you have a card like this, just get a copy, and if you haven't already, make sure to do it right now. If you're going to be doing the King Calamity lock, it's going to be useful, or if you just use it in Mannadium or some of these combo decks where it's also going to prove itself to be really, really good. Like, you don't need to necessarily summon the King Calamity. There's ways of cheating out the D-spot that, and you can just do a lot with it, so I would suggest to pick it up. The next card we're going to be talking about is kind of, it's a sad topic, but the Wanted Secret Spell is going up. And it's sad because it was around 50 euros or something like that, but now it's almost 62, 63, somewhere around that. We can see that the engine is really, really good. And immediately when there were some tournament results, like, it was fairly apparent that it's gonna be insane also a couple months later. Like, there's potential with Fire Kings, and Rescue Ace is still full power, obviously. Infernova is going to be able to utilize this engine further. And if there's anything, literally anything that has a level 1 fire, you can utilize this engine. Inside of that deck, Mikanko is also making great use of this, and the spell is going up. The Diabelistar is actually contrary going down, and it's around 18 to 19 euros, whereas before it was like 20, 22, something like that. So it's steady, actually. But the Wanted Secret Spell is going up, and it's around almost 65. So I would suggest getting it. I know it's like one of those situations where you just have to bite the bullet and do it, but I think if you're going to be going to events and being competitive, this engine is going to do a lot for you if you're trying to play some of the top strategies right now. Fire Kings are coming out in a structure deck. And if you've seen patterns, what Konami does, at least recently, they print something that is cheap, and then you have to get a couple expensive cards to actually make the strategy good and viable and meta relevant. So in the case of Fire Kings, which are probably going to prove themselves to be meta relevant if we can judge by the OCG, you just have to get the entire Sinful Spoils package. It's just the way it is. It's the way they're pushing the game and product and everything. So before this becomes like a 70 euro card, please get it, because you need a playset. And if you don't want to play this, if you're just running Unchained and chilling, that's amazing. But for everyone that is wanting to play this, I think you have to get it. It's gonna hurt your wallet, but it's just what's up. So, okay. Moving on to Horus. This is actually another secret rare archetype from the same set that, we all knew has potential, but it just didn't become meta relevant right out of the gate. There's potential with Tearlaments, but some people say that the other version is actually better. You can play it with Bestios, but what you can also play it with is the Centurion cards. So as soon as people start to realize that this engine is actually really nice, you don't need to play a huge engine, you just have Imseti, King Sarcophagus, and also Happy if you want. The cards are going to go up, and if you check out Imseti, it was around 30 euros or something like that, and now it's almost 40. It is steadily going up, the price trend is around 35 still, but it's probably going to go even higher, especially if Centurion actually becomes meta. So I would suggest to pick up this engine, because it's just good all around. You can make any kind of level rank 8 monsters. You can utilize Zombie Vampire. Imseti draws you a card, so that's really nice. And there's a lot of potential. Stuff still needs to be explored, but you would rather have these cards on hand and then just pull them out of your binder, as opposed to having to buy them when people inevitably break them. Obviously, all of my videos are just suggestions, so you probably don't need to pick up all of these cards, because you're not going to be playing all of these decks. If you are, sure, great, more power to you, but you're probably not. So just choose one deck, invest into that one, but some of the most important decks right now are actually utilizing these expensive engines. So you can decide for yourself, but don't say I didn't warn you, is all I'm saying. Now, the last couple of cards are just good-looking, higher rarity prints, and it's ultra rare versions of the cards we're going to be talking about that are actually common and really, really cheap. So if you just want to play commons, if you're fine with that, that's great. But if you want to pick up the ultra rare version of Amphibious Swarm Ship and Blow Whale, And also Cosmic Blazer Dragon, you can do that. Now, both of these cards are going to be utilized in decks moving forward. We talked about Fire Kings. We also talked about Centurion in this video. And the former is going to be used in Fire Kings, whereas the latter can see play in Centurion. So again, it's going to depend on what you want to play moving forward, but both of these have common as well as ultra rare printings, and the ultras are not expensive at all. If you look at the Link 4, it's literally around €1 for an ultra, but since it's from Dark Neostorm, which was not that recently, it's probably going to go up to like €3 or €4 if it like the deck becomes really popular. So at that point, it's just going to feel bad to have to spend for that card. Right now, you can just get it in a trade or something, so I wanted to advise you to pick it up. And as for the Cosmic Blazer Dragon, it's around, let's see, it's around €3 to €4, which is not ideal, but it's only one. And you can make it in the Centurion deck if you don't want to go for the Calamity Lock, because with the Calamity Lock, it's kind of awkward if it's not the first chain link, so the last thing to resolve, the last thing to happen, it's actually gonna miss timing when it gets summoned. So at that point, you may want to use the Cosmic Blazer Dragon and summon it instead. So it can play a really important role in that deck just overall, and it's around €4, so it's not like you're spending a fortune. And as for the Fire Kings, like I said, they have a ton of potential, but you're gonna have to wait just a tiny bit because some of the most important cards are actually coming out in Phantom Nightmare as well as Maze of Millennia in January. So it's not going to happen right now, but that's why I make these videos, to give you advice before stuff goes up. You can see examples of pretty much everything coming out of a side set that becomes expensive, and it's very similar with decks that just get support and then just stuff spikes and it's really annoying to have to pick it up. So if you do it beforehand, then later you just need to pick up structure decks or the Centurion cards if you want, which are expensive, or probably gonna be expensive regardless, so you don't want to spend even more money. So pretty much that's it. Hopefully I helped you and gave you a couple ideas so you don't need to spend a fortune in a couple months and you can have everything already ready in your binder. And if you enjoyed, make sure to like the video as well as share all of your ideas and thoughts, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.